Congressman Biggs, how are you this morning?
Great. How are you, Leland?
I am excellent. Are you an enemy of the state, as Nancy Pelosi says?
Well, I like to think that if you're talking about big government, higher taxes, and the socialist states the Democrats want, then yes, I am an enemy of that state.
Okay, well played. Well played, Congressman.
You know what? And she should be removed from the speakership over that. I mean, that is ridiculous. It's
right.
It's insightful to violence, etc. She should be gone.
Well, and you think back to the situation with your colleague in the House of Representatives, Mr. Scalise, and what happened there with the Bernie bro that went nuts with his gun. And that was a direct result of some of the rhetoric that was going around. You hear a lot of talk in the media on the left about how, it's right-wing media that incites violence. And yet I can't remember in my lifetime, not saying that there isn't, sometimes violence on the far extremes of all politics, but it just blows me away right now that the left and the media and that these politicians in Washington aren't saying a word. Harris and Biden, neither of them saying a word about what's happening in some of the cities.
No, that's right. In fact, you've got AOC saying something different. She's saying, "I'm glad that the American people she's not calling them riots." But she's saying, "I'm glad the American people are out there taking to the streets and overcoming what she perceives to be a problematic form of government." Quite frankly, so you got her saying that. You've got others describing these things as peaceful protests, and we had one congresswoman from the Seattle area describe the autonomous zone that was there as a community garden. They are not. They're not telling you the truth. I mean,
right.
That's the problem, and they don't care because this is part of a revolution. They want to overthrow the government. I mean, that sounds wild, but that is exactly the stated purpose here.
Well, and that's the fascinating thing is that I've never seen America so united on something as they were on police reform right after the George Floyd incident. I think most Americans are like, there's some things that we can do, some common sense things that we can do to make that part of the system run better, and to weed out those, bad cops that exist in the system. But what's happening right now doesn't have anything to do with that, and it's not unifying in any way, shape, or form. And as you said, it's taking advantage of a situation to try to further a completely different goal. Let me get your reaction to the first night of the RNC convention. What did you think last night?
That was really, I thought it was excellent, actually. I thought it was very motivating, very touching in times, and golly, if there was not a great contrast between a party that is optimistic, full of hope, believes in American people, American individualism, that understands the roots of this country and how big we've grown and the branches that are growing from this tree of freedom, versus the Democrats who want to chop that tree of freedom down, and they did it in a very boring, dry, stilted fashion last week. And I think you see the energy of the Republicans. My good friend Gates and Jordan's, they gave great speeches. Mrs. Harp about the right to try legislation that was signed in. And then you got to say, for me, everybody had a different favorite. I was checking around on social media, but for me, Herschel Walker's speech, out of the park.
Yeah. I have some audio of that I'm going to play a little bit later. My favorite line in that was, "People didn't like me when I ran over them either." He was talking about.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, that's great. We'll play a little bit of that later. Joe Biden, in an interview with ABC News, saying that he wants to tax anybody making over $400,000 a year. One of the problems that I have, and we've been talking about this morning, is that I think a lot of Americans don't make $400,000 a year, so that sounds like an easy thing to lay off the punishment on somebody that's not them. It doesn't affect them. But I don't think people realize how many small businesses fall into that category.
No, that's right. I mean, he's going to go after small businesses directly with that kind of tax. But I mean, he really wants to raise taxes on everybody, and this is just the first salvo, because don't never forget that the left is authoritarian in nature. They want control. They want power, and taxation is one of the best ways for ruthless people to get power.
Yeah.
You have to pay to run your government, but they're going to expand the size of government, so they're going to have to need more money, and so that means that they're going to pursue taxation. They're going to try to control us.
Right. Speaking of controlling us, I just want to make it clear. I believe that wearing masks does somewhat mitigate coronavirus. It doesn't solve it. I have no problem wearing a mask in a grocery store. I think when Vice President Joe Biden says we should wear it anytime we go outside, he's an idiot. But I have no problem with wearing a mask. The problem that I have with what's going on right now is the fact that we're still partially shut down in America, and there's no reason for that. If we socially distance and wear a mask, we should be able to open up everything. Do you think there's a sense here? Because I have a prediction. I think no matter who wins the election, after the election, suddenly this virus is going to kind of fade into the background. The media is going to stop hyping it as much. Democrat politicians are going to stop demanding masks, et cetera. And I think we're going to see a shift. Do you agree with that? Do you think a lot of this is really about just getting people afraid and scared?
Well, I agree with you that a lot of this is about getting engendering panic in the populace, for sure, because they believe that if they generate fear, that's the number one motivating factor to get people to vote for change.
Right.
But I have to tell you, my thought is they're already laying the groundwork. I'm already hearing Democrats talking about the intersection between the flu and coronavirus.
Yeah.
And I believe that if President Trump is reelected, which I would believe he will be, that you're going to hear the left come out and say, well, look, now we're in the flu season. We haven't fully taken care of COVID, so we got to keep shut down. I'm serious.
Yeah.
They're going to say we need to keep shut down. We need to lock down. We got to keep masks on. All of these things. And that's really a huge concern that I have going